In a moment that could define the future of the continent, Europe's most influential leaders have come together to deliver a powerful and unified message to the world, and at the heart of it all is Ukraine. As the war drags on and the world watches, the stakes have never been higher. The decisions made now will echo for generations, shaping not only the fate of Ukraine, but the very fabric of European security, democracy, and unity. This is a story of leadership, resolve, and the unyielding belief that Europe must stand together in the face of aggression. So, what exactly happened, and why does it matter? Here's what you need to know about this extraordinary show of European unity, the leaders involved, and the message they're sending to Moscow, Washington, Kyiv, and the world. In the wake of the recent US-Russia summit in Alaska, a meeting that many hoped would bring a breakthrough in the ongoing conflict, leaders from France, Italy, Germany, the United Kingdom, Finland, Poland, Portugal, and the European Commission gathered for a high-stakes summit of their own. The list reads like a who's who of European power: French President Emmanuel Macron, Italian Prime Minister Giorgia Meloni, German opposition leader Friedrich Merz, British Prime Minister Rishi Sunak, Finnish President Alexander Stubb, Polish Prime Minister Donald Tusk, Portuguese leader António Costa, and European Commission President Ursula von der Leyen. Each brought their own perspective, but all were united by a single purpose: to chart a path forward for Ukraine and for Europe. The Alaska summit, despite high hopes and intense media coverage, ended with little to show for it. There was no ceasefire, no peace deal, and no real progress toward ending the war. The world watched as leaders left the conference room with somber faces, the weight of missed opportunity heavy in the air. For many in Europe, this was a wake-up call, a reminder that waiting for others to solve the crisis is not an option. In response, the European leaders stepped up to the microphone, determined to fill the void left by the lack of progress. Their message was clear, direct, and impossible to ignore. Europe will not stand by while Ukraine's future hangs in the balance. They are ready to take action, to lead, and to ensure that the values of democracy, sovereignty, and peace are defended. The first major announcement from the summit was a call for a new, expanded international summit, one that would bring together not just European leaders, but also representatives from the United States, and crucially, Ukraine itself. The goal? To push for what they described as a just and lasting peace. This isn't just about ending the fighting, it's about building a future where Ukraine's sovereignty is respected, its borders are secure, and its people are free to choose their own destiny. The leaders emphasized that any peace process must include Ukraine at the table, not just as a subject of negotiation, but as a full and equal participant. The European leaders were adamant. Peace cannot come at the expense of justice. They rejected any notion that Ukraine should be forced to make territorial concessions or accept a future dictated by Moscow. Instead, they insisted that true peace must be based on respect for international law, the sovereignty of nations, and the right of every country to determine its own path. Across European capitals, this message resonated with citizens and officials alike, fueling rallies, protests, and a renewed sense of solidarity with Ukraine. At the heart of the summit's declaration was a firm commitment to Ukraine's right to defend itself. The leaders made it clear that Ukraine's ability to choose its allies, pursue its own security arrangements, and build partnerships with Europe and the West is non-negotiable. This is not just a matter of principle, it's a matter of survival for Ukraine and a test of Europe's credibility on the world stage. To back up their words, several countries announced new defense agreements, increased military aid, and expanded training programs for Ukrainian forces. Security guarantees for Ukraine were another major focus. The leaders called for robust, long-term commitments to ensure that Ukraine is never left vulnerable to future aggression. They welcomed President Trump's recent statements promising that the United States stands ready to support Ukraine and urged Washington to work closely with Europe in crafting a comprehensive security framework. This, they argued, is essential not only for Ukraine's safety, but for the stability of the entire region. The message to Moscow was unmistakable. Any further attempts to undermine Ukraine's sovereignty will be met with a united and determined response from both sides of the Atlantic. On the issue of sanctions, the European leaders were equally resolute. They made it clear that the economic pressure on Russia will not be lifted until there is real, verifiable progress toward peace. Sanctions, they argued, are a vital tool for holding aggressors accountable and deterring future violations of international law. Across Europe, governments are working to close loopholes, target key sectors of the Russian economy, and coordinate with allies to maximize the impact of these measures. The message is simple. As long as Russia continues its campaign of aggression, it will face growing isolation and economic pain. Each leader brought their own national priorities and perspectives to the table, but all found common ground in their support for Ukraine. French President Emmanuel Macron spoke passionately about the need for European unity, warning that division only serves the interests of those who seek to undermine democracy. Italian Prime Minister Giorgia Meloni focused on the importance of economic recovery and reconstruction, pledging support for Ukraine's rebuilding efforts. German opposition leader Friedrich Merz emphasized the need for strong security guarantees and a credible deterrent against further aggression. British Prime Minister Rishi Sunak highlighted the importance of international cooperation, while Finnish President Alexander Stubb reaffirmed his country's unwavering support for Ukraine's defense. Polish Prime Minister Donald Tusk called for a renewed commitment to democracy and human rights, warning that the struggle in Ukraine is a test of Europe's values and resolve. Portuguese leader António Costa drew a direct line between Ukraine's fate and the future of Europe itself. He argued that the outcome of this conflict will shape the continent's security architecture for decades to come, and that Europe cannot afford to be complacent. Costa called for increased humanitarian aid, support for refugees, and a long-term strategy for integrating Ukraine into the European family. European Commission President Ursula von der Leyen closed the summit with a powerful pledge of unwavering EU backing for Ukraine. She outlined a comprehensive package of financial, military, and political support, and promised that the European Union will stand by Ukraine for as long as it takes. Von der Leyen also called on member states to accelerate Ukraine's path toward EU membership, arguing that a strong, democratic Ukraine is in the best interests of all Europeans. The bottom line from the summit was unmistakable. Europe is standing together, united in purpose and resolve. There will be no wavering, no mixed messages, and no retreat in the face of aggression. The leaders sent a clear signal to both friends and foes. The days of a divided Europe are over. In this new era, the continent will act as one, defending its values, its security, and its future. As the world watches and waits, the decisions made in these rooms will shape not just the outcome of the war in Ukraine, but the future of the entire region. The stakes could not be higher. Will Europe's unity hold? Can the transatlantic alliance deliver on its promises? And most importantly, will Ukraine's struggle for freedom and sovereignty inspire a new chapter in European history? Only time will tell, but one thing is certain: the eyes of the world are on Europe, and the next moves will define a generation.